This is Jerry Coleman, play-by-play voice of the Dothan High Wolves on 96.9 The Legend, and you're tuned into the Phillip Jordan podcast.
What's up, everybody? Welcome in to the Phillip Jordan podcast. I am your host, Phillip Jordan, in-studio host and producer of the Wolves football on 96.9 The Legend and Auburn writer for Last Word on college football. Got a fun show planned for you guys here on the show today. In just a few moments, I am going to be joined by Chase Robinson from the Southeastern 16, also the Chase Robinson Show from 7 to 9 on 1580 WTAZ. The stadium. Also, he does Oxford high school football play-by-play. We're going to review week 5 in the SEC, focusing on Alabama's thrilling win over Georgia. Auburn pretty much throwing it away against Oklahoma. And then, of course, we will look at Kentucky's upset victory over Ole Miss this past week. And then, of course, I'm going to go over some other college football stuff that's happened over here the last few days. But to do all that, you guys can find me in the podcast. Find me on social media at PJordanSEC. The podcast is available on all your favorite podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. If you're on Apple Podcasts, please follow, rate, and review. Leave a review, and I will read it on a future edition of the show. And if you leave just 4 stars, you're just a straight-up hater. You can also check out the show over at Wiregrass Daily News, my YouTube channel, Phillip Jordan Sports. You can always email me at sports.philipjordan@gmail.com. Going to take a quick 30 to 40-second break, but on the other side, I'll be joined by Chase Robinson from the Southeastern 14. High school football season, and that means the Dothan Wolves are back on 96.9 The Legend. Every Thursday night, check out the Jed Kennedy Coaches Show with Jerry Coleman and Ken Lambert as they sit down with Dothan Wolves head coach Jed Kennedy about the previous game and preview the upcoming opponent. If you missed the Jed Kennedy Coaches Show, you can check out the podcast at wiregrassdailynews.com or go to your favorite podcast catcher and just type in Dothan High School Football. And, of course, every Friday night, pregame starts at 6:45 and kickoff is at 7 for all the Dothan Wolves football action. All right, it was a thrilling weekend of SEC football coming out of week 5, and joining me to recap it and then just kind of figure out what's going on in the SEC is Chase Robinson. You can check him out over on the Southeastern 16 with their SEC football coverage. Also, the Chase Robinson Show from 7 to 9 Central Time on 1580 The Stadium. Also does some Oxford football play-by-play as well. So he's all over the place. But Chase, I appreciate you coming on the show to review week 5 in the SEC.
Yeah, I stay busy during football season. It's fun. I love this time of the year.
You know, what does Josh Pate say? The grind is a blessing.
That's right. It sure is. It's a lot of fun. And, yeah, great weekend. So I appreciate you having me on and to talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I was checking it out, and you guys went live on Southeastern 16 during the Alabama-Georgia game. So y'all kind of had a live watch of the Georgia comeback, didn't you?
We did, yeah. So we do live reaction on Saturday nights, and usually we start towards the end of the third quarter, start of the fourth quarter of the last game of the night. And when we went on, we thought the game, could be over, especially if Alabama scored again. But as we were on there and watching it, yeah, it went much different than we originally thought when we went on the live stream as Georgia mounted that comeback there. But what an instant classic we saw Saturday night, and just a tremendous job by Georgia of making the adjustments. And I knew watching the game, look, Alabama started off 28-0. They can't keep that pace of play up and doing that all night long against Georgia. You just can't do that. And so it surprised me none when Georgia started to come back. I didn't think they would come back the way they did and eventually take the lead. But good job by Alabama of not getting down in that moment and having a good response and being able to get a big play and then the pick that sealed it. I mean, just a classic college football game between two really good teams. And I think we may see this matchup again, Phillip.
Yeah, absolutely. We just could have just seen round one, and it was interesting. Which on Georgia side of things, we're not used to seeing the defense look like that from Georgia, like they did in the first half. Like I said, 28-0, Alabama jumps out. They were missing tackles, and even on what was the game-winning touchdown, they were Ryan Williams, who I didn't know if you knew this, Chase, but he's 17 years old. Just
yeah, I heard that a time or
audience,
two.
let the audience know that. But still, the Georgia defense just kind of looked out of character in this. I mean, Alabama's got a lot of great explosive players, but still, the Georgia defense was kind of out of sorts.
Yeah, that's not what I was expecting to see. We really dive in depth in the offseason on these rosters, and I knew at certain areas this Georgia defense was a little young. But yeah, the way Alabama was able to big play them, I think, really stood out to me, and makes me think, about what's to come for Georgia. I mean, Texas, Tennessee, Ole Miss, three very explosive offensive teams, and how they can fare in those games. But yeah, the way the Georgia defense played, I think was a little uncharacteristic, and I know they're going to change some things, and I think Alabama was throwing some things out there that they hadn't seen on film. I don't know if that had something to do with it, but yeah, Ryan Williams just He picked apart that defense, and so did Jalen Milroe. Hats off to Milroe. I mean, he picked it apart as well, and he took advantage of some of the things that Georgia's defense was giving him, and they turned it into points. And yeah, it was like Ryan Williams. They couldn't even. He had like something around him where they couldn't even touch him. It was unreal what he was able to do. And yeah, it was uncharacteristic. I think they will make some changes, but yeah, it makes me question maybe where this defense is at for Georgia, and how they're going to, and how that's going to affect them down the road.
Yeah, and you're talking about Jalen Milroe, 27-33, 374, 2 touchdowns, and the 117 on the ground, 2 touchdowns. I think he put himself squarely in the front runner seat of the Heisman with that performance on Saturday night. What did we talk about the Georgia defense, the issues were struggling, but what did you see that Alabama was really doing, just that was giving them trouble? And then in the second half, it seemed like Georgia kind of figured it out and slowed it down.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Alabama was they were attacking the ground pretty hard. They were, and I think Kirby said this going into halftime. They were going empty back, and Milroe was running, which, again, under Nick Saban, you didn't see as many designed runs as what we're seeing under Kalen DeBoer for Alabama. And so I think Milroe being able to run it and throw some wrinkles in there, and I think just the explosiveness. We haven't seen a lot of big plays from Alabama. We've seen some, but I feel like that's what they were trying to do against Georgia, is just air out the ball, get it going deep, get some of these running backs out for some quick passes. So I felt like they did a lot of things I haven't done yet, and I think that really threw Georgia off. And not only did they do things that they haven't done, they did them well. Jalen Milroe was completing his passes. He wasn't overthrowing it. He was right on target. And I think that was also big in this game.
Yeah, because I think a lot of people are still questioning going into this year about Jalen Milroe. I mean, we know how great of a runner he can be, and he throws a better deep ball than most people in college football. Maybe the best at throwing a deep ball, but it's always the intermediate stuff, like the other passes, the 10 to 15-yard pass. And he looked great on Saturday night doing that. It really looks like being under Kalen DeBoer. He's really stepped up, and that has become a major part of his development.
It has, and I think they work well together, DeBoer and Milroe and Nick Sheridan, the offensive coordinator there at Alabama. Like, I think he just fits. Milroe fits what they're trying to do, and I think that the plan that they have just revolves around what can Milroe do, and he can do a lot. And I think that's going to help Alabama down the stretch, because he can run it well, he can throw it, and get the job done, and he can read the defense well to know if he needs to run or not. So I think he has some great attributes that make for a really good quarterback.
And then the other quarterback, Carson Beck, coming in, had not turned the ball over all year. 2 interceptions in the first half. I know he had 3, but that one at the end, you're trying to score at the end. But the 2 in the first half, and he just was off. The whole Georgia offense was off. What did you see was causing them some trouble?
A lot of pressure. Alabama was putting a lot of pressure on him that Alabama has not done really all season. And so again, There were things that Georgia was trying to do, but they couldn't because Alabama was throwing some different things at them. And yeah, Carson Beck just looked uncharacteristic. I said that about the defense. I felt like that was the same for him. Like, that's not the Carson Beck we're used to seeing. And then some of it had to do with the pressure, maybe the moment. It was a big moment. And I feel like when he missed that pass to Arian Smith I guess it was the first quarter, and it was in the first half. I feel like if he had caught that and scored, that would have been a huge turning point of the game, but he didn't. And I feel like that's when Alabama got a lot of momentum. I feel like that's another thing for Carson Beck. He just didn't get a lot of momentum offensively in the first half. He did in the second half, and you saw what he was able to do. But yeah, just an uncharacteristic first half. I mean, I don't put that on him or think anything differently about him. Quarterbacks have games like that. But he's not going to look impressive when you look at the stats column and you look at the interception column. But overall, hats off to Carson Beck for leading his team in a spectacular second half to make it a good ball game.
Yeah, he really showed, some people have him as the top quarterback for this upcoming next year's NFL draft. And just seeing that, because a lot of quarterbacks having a bad half like that, they would have folded. They would have just, okay, it just was chalk it up. We'll move on to the next week. But just to fight back. And it was kind of funny watching on TV when Georgia took that 34-33 lead. You see the Alabama fans, for people on YouTube, had their hands on top of their head and all that stuff. It's like, oh no, what's happening here? And you got to believe if we do see these two teams match up again, Kirby Smart's going to make some adjustments. What Alabama was successful at in this game won't be the case in the next one, and vice versa. Alabama will adjust too if these two meet again.
Yeah, and that's it's hard to beat a team twice because Georgia's seen Alabama, Alabama's seen Georgia, and they can try to fix things up and change things up to the opponent. But yeah, it's hard to beat a team twice. So if we meet again, we could probably be looking at a different scenario and outcome next time.
Yeah, this could end up being a 3-round fight if they meet in SEC and then in the playoff. So a team that we know it's not going to be a playoff team, but let's move on to the Auburn Tigers and the Oklahoma Sooners. I watched this game from start to finish. Of course, everybody listening knows I cover Auburn last word on college football. Auburn should have won this game. I mean, this is a game. I mean, you look at the numbers; they outgained Oklahoma. Peyton Thorne, that last interception ruins everything he did good Saturday.
Yeah,
3 touchdowns, 338. Obviously, that was the issue. Just you look at Auburn. Do you chalk it up as Peyton Thorne a bad decision on that play on 3rd and 4, going with it was RPO, or Hugh Freeze just run the ball, How do you see that whole situation with Auburn?
It's tough. To me, Auburn has got to run the ball more. You have Jarquez Hunter. You got 3 good running backs. You have an inconsistent quarterback. And look, I know Peyton Thorne had a good day Saturday. He looked like a different guy. Auburn looked like a different team on Saturday for the good. And but in that situation, you're trying to run the clock out. Let's run the clock out. Let's get a win, and that's the easier said than done. But, I feel like you could have – things could have gone differently if you'd run the ball. And I think that they need to get Jarquez Hunter more involved. I was thinking back to the Arkansas game. He only ran the ball 12 times, and that number needs to be way higher for Jarquez Hunter. And I know they got him involved Saturday morning against Oklahoma. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I feel like in that situation, I would run the ball, try to run the clock out, and not risk an opportunity for a mistake, for a turnover. They've had a lot of those this year, and you don't want to put your quarterback in a position where he could do that. And so I put this on Hugh Freeze on the play calling, and obviously that's what he called for him to throw it, or that's what Peyton Thorne thought he should do in the RPO situation, and he's the one that made the mistake. So I could see it on both sides, but yeah, in those situations, I feel like they could have success running the ball, and so I feel like that's definitely what they should have done in that moment.
Yeah, and then it was the first drive of the game, and they get all the way down there, inside the 5, and you bring Sam Jackson. the fifth. He comes in there, and that's not something Auburn's done. And like you said, when you got Jarquez Hunter, and why are you taking Peyton Thorne out? Because Peyton Thorne is also a threat to run. I feel like, honestly, Chase, I thought, is Gus Malzahn back at Auburn? Because that was very Gus Malzahn like what Auburn was doing there. But I don't know, maybe Hugh Freeze was trying to almost outsmarted himself in that situation.
Yeah, I that was a head scratcher to me too. I was watching the game and I don't know. Unless that may be something they practice a lot, and he had a lot of confidence in, hey, Jackson can get in there, can get this done, and they did. And so I think that's a learning thing moving forward. But to me, I feel like you play it safe in those type situations, and just do what you know you can do. And not try to throw any wrinkles in, because really in the position that Auburn's in right now, you just got to win. You got to do whatever it takes to win. That's the point we're at with Auburn football right now. If you want to compete, you got to do what it takes to win. And I feel like at moments they're just not doing that. They're trying to be fancy or throw some different things in there when they just need to buckle down, play football, and try to win.
Yeah, and you look at the schedule coming up. Your first 5 games were at home, and you go 2-3.
Right.
You cut the turnovers halfway out with the Cal game and then Arsenal game. You probably win those games. And then, hey, look, the pick six don't happen. You probably win that. The turnovers have cost this team. And now you're going to Georgia this Saturday. Then you're off, and then you're at Missouri. Then you're at Kentucky before you get home in November when you play Vanderbilt. You got Louisiana Monroe, A&M. Then you close out at Alabama. It kind of seems like it's hard to look at that schedule and see where do they get 4 more wins just to get to a bowl game.
Yeah, I don't know if they will playing like they are right now. Now, if they played like they did in the first 3 quarters of that game against Oklahoma, then we're having a different conversation. Mm-hmm. But they just couldn't finish. And I feel like here's the thing that really bothered me, Phillip, in that game, and where I think could be a turning point for Auburn. When Peyton Thorne threw the pick 6, I feel like he just couldn't come back after that game. He was mentally he wasn't good to be able to come back and finish the game, take them on a drive to win the game. And I feel like that needs to change. If they want to make a bowl game, they need to be able to come back from mistakes. And I feel like Peyton Thorne has not been able to do that yet. I don't know if it's the pressure put on. I don't know. I can't put my finger on it, but I know that when he turns the ball over, he has a hard time coming back from that. And hopefully we see a difference in that. I mean, I think that's just something that he's got to get past. He's a good quarterback and make a mistake and move on next play, And so I think that could be something big for Auburn if they're able to just shake off these turnovers. I mean, they're going to happen from time to time. I know they've happened a lot for Auburn, but it's going to happen. But you got to shake it off and lead your team on the next drive when given the opportunity. But yeah, looking at the rest of their schedule, I mean, I see 2 games where they'll be favorites. Maybe 2. They will be against Louisiana Monroe, and I think it'll be close against Vanderbilt. They're playing good football right now, and who knows where they'll be November the 2nd, But I think they'll be favored in those 2 games. Auburn could most definitely win more than those 2 games, but the way they're playing right now, it's hard to find anywhere on the schedule besides Louisiana Monroe for sure that they can win.
I don't want to ignore Oklahoma. If by chance I have anybody from Oklahoma checking this out, look, I said Auburn outplayed them, but at the end of the day, Oklahoma made the plays. Kip Lewis with the pick 6 takes it into the house, and of course, they had the big runs, their freshman quarterback with the 48-yard. I mean, they made the plays to win the game. What's your feel on Oklahoma right now? Because defensively, they're really good, but offense seems to be the problem.
Yeah, the offense is the problem. I really like their defense. Looking at them in the offseason, I thought this could be a really entertaining defense, and they seem to be. There's so many injuries offensively. It's hard to even gauge really where they're at. I mean, offensive line has just been beat up all season. Hawkins, I feel like maybe the guy to give them a little spark. They had so many receivers out Saturday. To me, it's just been hard to really get a gauge on the offense, and that's why there's issues. There's just so many injuries. They haven't had all their guys, and when they do, I think they can be dangerous. It's just, and I think Hawkins again can be kind of that spark to lead them. But yeah, I really like their defense, have all season, and the offense, just barring all the injuries, is to me what's been the biggest problem.
Yeah, Michael Hawkins too looked like. Of course, he had that big 48-yard run in the first half. He scored the first points of the game, but then the Auburn pressure seemed to get to him. He did look more comfortable in the second half.
Yeah, and credit Auburn's defense. I thought they did a great job of coming back. He went on that long run, and Auburn's defense had some miscues there, but they really did a good job of bouncing back and being able to put pressure on him, much needed pressure on him. And like you said, he had trouble reacting to that pressure. So credit Auburn's defense there. I thought they did a tremendous job of containing him when they haven't been able to contain previous quarterbacks very well, who were a versatile dual threat guys. I thought they did a good job with Hawkins Saturday.
Yeah, Hugh Freeze mentioned that at the game and before the game kicked off with the interview with ABC. Of course, we got Saturday kicked off with a big upset. I mean, I don't think a lot of people looked at Kentucky as a team that was going to beat Ole Miss. And I'll tell you what, the way that game started, the way Ole Miss just marched down the field very quickly, I was like, oh no, Kentucky's in trouble. But credit Mark Stoops and that defense. I mean, it's got to be probably the biggest win when you look at where Ole Miss was ranked for Kentucky under Mark Stoops. And I want to ask you this. Did Ole Miss get exposed, or is Kentucky just better than we thought? Because Kentucky's a weird team. The South Carolina game, they almost beat Georgia. They beat Ole Miss. Yeah. Where do you see that?
I really like Kentucky's defense. I think they're great. Chris Lee and I talked about it on our channel preseason and when starting the season. Look, to watch out for this Kentucky defense. They're for real, and they're showing that now. They had their issues against South Carolina. Yeah, okay, that's a game, but what they did against Georgia, what they did against Ole Miss proves that this defense is legit. And so I don't mark this up as a bad thing for Ole Miss. Yes, losing to Kentucky is not good for your future, especially when it comes to the playoff and momentum and everything. But Kentucky's defense, and yes, credit the coaching staff because they did a great job of figuring out how to stop these high-powered weapons that Ole Miss has, and a lot of coaches are going to be watching that tape and talking to Mark Stoops and seeing what he did to stop these guys. So credit Kentucky. I thought they had a great game plan coming in, and they executed well. And it was. I feel like it was just one of those days for Ole Miss where a lot didn't go right, and they were playing a really good defense when a lot didn't go right. And I feel like that's how Kentucky won that game.
And it was the formula they had against Georgia. They controlled the time of possession, almost doubled up Ole Miss. And when you have a ball pop up into your receiver's hand in the end zone, like the way they did on that score that put them ahead in the fourth quarter, I saw that, Chase, and I was like, this is Kentucky's game. If this is happening for you, you're in pretty good shape.
Yes, things were going well, but they moved the ball really good on Ole Miss, and Ole Miss has a great defense themselves, and Kentucky was just able to chug along, move it, get the job done. I mean, don't mark Kentucky out. That they're going to win some games, but also don't mark Ole Miss off either. They're going to win a lot of games too, and they're still a playoff team in my mind. And but yeah, great game. But hey, tip of the hat to Kentucky. They got the job done. They did what a lot of people are going to want to do this season and control the tempo of the game against Ole Miss.
Yeah, and when you look at Ole Miss's schedule, that loss we'll see how it happens at the end of the year if they want to get to the playoff because, yes, they got the matchups with LSU and Georgia, but their schedule, is not the toughest when you compare it to other SEC teams. So that didn't help them out from a resume standpoint potentially at the end of the year.
You're right. And, you mentioned the LSU, the Georgia game. Those are two games to watch for Ole Miss. I don't think a 3-loss team will get in the playoffs with the losses that they have. So they need to win all, but I think they can afford to have 2 losses. So when you look at that LSU and Georgia game, they got to win one of those, I think.
Yeah, so it's going to be interesting. And that LSU game's coming up in a few weeks. So real quick before I let you go. So now I think a lot of people going into Alabama, Georgia, and the Georgia wins. Okay, Georgia's the best team in the SEC, even though Texas was ranked number 1. Now we look at Alabama ranked number 1, but Texas is still sitting out there. Obviously, Ole Miss, that's a drop-off if you want to power rank these teams. So I'm going to put you on the spot. Alabama, Georgia, Texas. Who do you see as the best team in the SEC right now?
Alabama because of their explosiveness, and maybe Texas, the Texas is up there too. There's no doubt about it. But I think what we saw Saturday night and the explosiveness of the Alabama offense and being able to contain a really good Georgia offense for the Alabama defense, I'm going to say the Crimson Tide.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting in October when we get that Texas Georgia matchup
Yes.
when the Bulldogs head to head to Austin. So that's going to be a lot of fun. And this has been a lot of fun, Chase, having y'all talking all things SEC from this past week. There was other games we didn't get to, but I feel like these three were the headliners from the weekend. But if the listener and viewers want to check out online, where can they find you?
Yeah, we're on YouTube, Southeastern 16. You can subscribe there. We, again, do predictions for all the games early in the week. We do reaction live Saturday night and a lot of videos in between. But we cover football, basketball, and baseball there on Southeastern 16. We're also on the podcast feed as well. So, yeah, check us out there for all things SEC.
All right, everybody, go check out Chase. Go check out the Southeastern 16. Chris and Blake a bit on here too as well. Great job they do over there covering all things SEC. And Chase, I appreciate the time, and hope we can do this again sometime down the road.
Sounds great. Thanks so much, Phillip.
96.9 The Legend is your connection to classic country legends. But Digio Strategies has other options too. News Talk 103.9 is your source for America's top news and entertainment shows. Like Rick and Bubba in the morning, Glenn Beck from 9 till 11 a.m., and Clay Travis and Buck Sexton middays from 11 a.m. till 2 p.m. Sean Hannity, Lars Larson, Ben Shapiro, Matt Walsh, and others fill your day with the latest news and views from America's top conservative voices. America at Night and Coast to Coast AM keep you company and connected throughout the night. Plus, Fox News, the Alabama Radio Network, and Wiregrass Daily News keep you informed with national, international, state, and local news. And with more musical choices like All the Hits, 106.7 KMX, Today's Country 95.5 WTVY, and Music 107.7. Digio Strategies gives you more choices and more variety. Listen on air, online, and on our apps. 96.9 The Legend is just the beginning.
All right, everybody. And again, thanks to Chase Robinson for coming on the show today. A lot of fun talking to him about all things SEC over the weekend. Real quickly, get into some things that we've seen over the last few days. And, of course, hadn't got into because down here we do talk about Florida State a little bit as well. Of course, we know they lost to SMU 42-16 on Saturday. I don't think a lot of people even knew this game was going on. A lot of people really talking about it. And that's just kind of a weird thing now that we sit here in September that we're not even talking about Florida State. And, of course, this game was on during the same time that the Alabama-Georgia game was too. So it obviously got lost in the shuffle on that as well. Again, DJU, 3 turnovers, 3 interceptions, 12 of 30, 222. The team as a whole had 63 yards rushing. That's been an issue for Florida State, not being able to run the ball this year. The turnovers, they fumbled the ball 3 times. They got it back, but still not being able to control the football. SMU dominated, running the game 204 yards. Bashard Smith had 129 of those yards. Quarterback Kevin Jennings was 16-23 for 254 and 3 touchdowns. And Florida State says they're 1-4, 1-3. In the ACC, and they will be without DJU for multiple weeks. Hand injury, a broken finger, it seems. Brock Glenn will take over to start versus Clemson this Saturday night. Of course, he started last year in the ACC championship game when the defense pretty much won that game for Florida State. But, he has some experience starting, but this may not be a bad thing for Florida State to get him out there, see what he's got, see what he's capable of. And you look at the schedule for Florida State coming up. You got Clemson this week, then you're off. Then you're at Duke, at Miami. You play North Carolina, you're at Notre Dame. You get another off week, Charleston Southern, and then Florida. The only game in there I see is a win to Charleston Southern. It's going to be tough. Maybe you can get one against North Carolina. Duke may be interesting. We'll see what happens with the Florida game. That's going to be a fun one at the end when those two do get together. But it's going to be rough. So, you look at Florida State with 1 win right now. So, I'm pretty much looking at a team that's probably maybe 3 wins. Who would have thought that going to year when this team was a favorite to win the ACC? Not just by your host here, but a lot of people thought Florida State was going to be the best team there. On Saturday night, I did go to the Troy football game as they lost to Louisiana Monroe 13-9. This one right here came down to the lack of passing game for Troy. They ran the ball well, 224 yards in the game. Gerald Green had 102 yards. Damian Taylor had 71. And Tucker Gilchrist had 55. But Tucker Gilchrist was in the game because Goose Crowder gets knocked out with the injury. And he was 6 of 11, 57 yards. There just was no threat of the passing game. Louisiana Monroe did a good job at limiting Devontae Ross just to 3 catches and 29 yards in the game. And then kicker Scott Taylor Renfro was 3 for 4 on field goals. And just that was the thing. And there were times with the run game, Troy did move the ball, but it just couldn't punch it in the end zone. And again, it goes back to the lack of a passing game. The only touchdown in the game came with 9:08 left in the game. Ahmad Hardy for Louisiana Monroe scored on a 1-yard touchdown. He had 106 yards on the game. And now Troy coming up, they play Texas State on Thursday night. And again, I will be at the Vet for this one. This will be a 6 o'clock over on ESPNU. Texas State, they are a 13.5-point favorite in this one. And looking at Texas State, they're 2-2 on the year. They beat Lamar and UTSA, but they have losses against Arizona State and Sam Houston. So we'll see what happens. Jordan McLeod, one of the best quarterbacks in the Sun Belt. He's thrown for a little bit under 1,200 yards, and he leads the conference with 12 touchdown passes. So we'll see what Troy can do on Thursday night in that one. And by the way, if you are checking us out, watching the live feed on YouTube late on Tuesday night, please, you can leave a comment. And I will read it before we get out of here. So if you have a comment, you have anything you want to say as we are live right now on YouTube, just go and post it down below, and I'll talk it up. I'll just talk about what you have to say. So I just see 2 people in here. So if you guys that are watching right now have a comment or a question, pop it into the comment section. I'll read it before we get out of here in just a few minutes. This week we also saw the SEC Big Ten look like a scheduling partnership. Of course, I think a lot of that will hinge on the fact that if these 2 teams or conferences agree 9 games, which SEC does not play 9 games, the Big Ten does. So the SEC, from everything from the reports, they would need to jump up to 9 games for this even to work. Of course, both, it seems, would want 4 automatic bids in the college football playoff. Of course, we know we're going to 14, very shortly, even though we hadn't even done the 12-team playoff yet. So that will still leave 6 spots. That's 8 spots that we go to the SEC and ACC. I don't like automatic bids. I just want the best 12 or 14 or how many teams you got. Just put the best in there and let's decide a champion. And we don't talk a lot of baseball here on this show, but for the baseball fans out there, if you did not see it on Tuesday night, the Braves lost 4-0 in Game 1 of the wild card round to the Pirates. They had 7 hits in the game. Game 2 will be Wednesday night, 7:30, ESPN2. Max Fried will be on the mound for the Braves. He was 11-10 this season with a 3.25 ERA. All right, guys, and that's going to do it for this edition of the Phillip Jordan Podcast. We should have something for you Thursday. We're going to look into the Atlanta Falcons. They're playing Thursday night, so we're going to look into something that a bonus pod for you later on in the week. Remember, you can follow me on social media at PJordanSEC. The podcast is available on all your favorite podcast platforms. Also, check it out over at Wiregrass Daily News. Watch the show on the Phillip Jordan YouTube channel, Phillip Jordan Sports, easy to find. And you can always email me at sports.phillipjordan@gmail.com and check out my written work over at Last Word on college football. Anyways, hope everybody has a great Wednesday. Until next time, bye-bye.